The Lexus IS250. Is it a good car or not? Now this is a 2015 IS250, and yes, it has that huge scowling grille. I personally find them absurd looking. Aside from the looks, which frankly you don't see most of the time you're driving a car, you're looking out the front. You can't even see the front of the car. So, what are these lowest price IS250s really like as a car? To begin with, hey, look. They're still made in Japan. So yes, they're solidly built, and under the hood, we take off this plastic crap, and there's a 2.5 liter V6 engine. This one is a 2015. It has 204 horsepower. Not racing standards, but plenty of power. In normal driving, this thing's got plenty of pickup. And what I like about it, it's a solid built Lexus V6 with timing chain, no sense to mess around with plastic and rubber timing belts. It's also normally aspirated. It's not turbocharged, so you don't have to worry about the turbocharger braking, and of course there's less wear on the engine. And sure, in the newer ones you can get one of those 4-cylinder turbocharged jobs that puts out more horsepower, but this plain old V6 engine, gonna outlast those things. And it's a typical Lexus. Got a nice leather interior. This one's a little messed up because it's been in a flood, so all the mats are gone, but the interior is nice. Got a big old back seat and a huge trunk that just goes back in forever. Now these 250s are made as a sportier car, a little bit tighter handling than the bigger Lexus. Sure, it doesn't ride as smooth as my wife's old ES300, which has a much cushier ride, but that's not what it was made for. Even when you look at the styling, you can see the styling's even more aggressive. It does have a decent ride. It's not a horrible ride. It's just tighter, so it handles quicker. And it's got all the bells and whistles. You can go eco, normal, sport, even has the snow button. So if you're in the snow, it'll stay in a certain gear longer, so it won't slip when you're taking off in the snow. The electronically controlled transmission, you can do paddle shifting if you want, down and up. But of course, most you want to know, hey, do they hold up? Well, yes, they do hold up. They're well-made Lexus vehicles. It's not like they're cheaper made. They're just the lowest price one that you can buy. And in that respect, hey, for me, cheap Scotty, they're still too expensive new. So if I bought one, I'd do just like my wife's ES300 that I bought. I would buy one of these used in a heartbeat if it was taken care of. As far as I'm concerned, it's a further refinement of Lexus' original idea, where they sent some Japanese dudes to California, where they studied Americans and saw what kind of a luxury car do Americans want. Well, they realized that, yeah, big V8 one rides smooth, huh? But now, they got sporty ones with 6-cylinder engines. If you're only going to be cruising around 75, 85, here in Texas, there's roads that have speed limits of 85, car's going to have no problem at all. But if you're on a pinch and you got to get out of the way, step on the gas, it takes off really quickly. And as I said, it does it with a normal engine. It doesn't have to use the trickery of gasoline direct injection. It's just a normal fuel-injected V6. And what's really cool about it is, it's rear-wheel drive, a classic driver's car. Go under here, there's the rear end, axles go to the back wheels. It's a serious driver's car. Man, now they're making even fancier ones. They got V8 engines in them, they're absolute screamers. Even with this V6, this thing's plenty quick enough, and it's a joy to drive. But with none of the headaches of an advanced V8 engine, where everything's hard to work on. This baby, everything's out in the open. It's easy to work on, and of course it's got the modern conveniences. Down here you can see there's the electric motor. It's got electronic power assist that allows you to drive it either conservatively or in sport mode. So it's like having more than one car. If you're rather conservative driving around, you want to get serious, push the sport mode, you can have a much tighter steering experience. The push of a button. But being a typical Lexus, they're well built. They rarely break down. So you don't have to worry about that system breaking down like you do with a lot of other manufacturers. You can see this one's been wrecked. That's just primer paints. And they cut and bolted it on. You can see it's been sprayed over after it's been fixed, but this one took the wreck, drives like a dream still. So, you can crumple the front end, rebuild them, and they still work great. Don't try that with, say, a GM vehicle. I had a customer with an Impel have a wreck like that. The insurance company fixed it. The car was never the same. It didn't handle right. It rattled. It had leaks. These things, they're getting wrecks. You can actually fix them and put them back on the road. The Acura ILX. In this case, it's a 2016. And as you can see, it's black on black because the owner uses this as an Uber black driver. My customer bought it because he wanted to make the extra money doing Uber black while he's going to college, but he didn't want to buy the most expensive one, so he got one that was the best price that qualified for Uber black. Now, of course, the main thing about Acuras is they're fancy Hondas. The engines are great. This particular one is a 4-cylinder, puts out 201 horsepower, and it's made it to an 8-speed DCT transmission. And in my opinion, this automatic transmission is one of the best that Honda, or you can call them Acura, it's the same company, has ever come up with. It has paddle shifters that actually work quite well because this 8-speed dual clutch transmission was really a game changer for Honda and Acura. It uses a conventional torque converter, and when it's set up with the dual clutch setup that it has, it engages one clutch at a time, so it can pre-select the next gear. It makes transitions from one gear to another pretty seamless. Some of these dual clutch transmissions, they don't shift all that great, especially at lower speeds, but this Acura one, pretty well bulletproof too. I've yet to have one breakdown on any of my customers' cars. But here's a warning, if you're gonna buy one of these, or any Honda product really, I'm servicing the transmission on this. It uses a very special fluid, the Acura ATF Type 2.0. And yeah, it costs like $12 a quart presently. But you don't wanna go out and buy $6 fluid. Buy the $12 a quart fluid when you change the fluid out in these things. Now, as you can see, it's got a reasonable trunk to it. It goes back. Even the back seats are comfy. But it's the driving experience that really makes this car. This car is a dream to drive. Got plenty of acceleration with the 200 horsepower pulling the small car. And it handles quite precisely. Now, if you judge it by its size, you can realize that it evolved out of the Honda Civic. But it was really Acura's first compact luxury sedan. Now, let's say you were thinking about getting the Honda Civic Type R, the racing one. Those things now start at like $37,000 and are hard to find. These Acura ILXs start at $26,000 and you get a lot of the fun. Sure, you don't have as much horsepower, but they're still very quick vehicles, and Acura's got a better image than Honda when it comes to luxury cars. And really, it's all Honda anyways. They make Hondas and Acuras. They share so much technology that this thing, for its price, it's actually quite a bargain. My customer gets 36 miles a gallon on this thing on a highway with a little bitty 4-cylinder engine, made it up to that 8-speed dual clutch transmission. And it gets about 25 in town. Nice luxury car. It gets good gas mileage for that kind of performance. And really, since they're based on Honda Civics, they have a history of long-term reliability with minimum repairs required. And set up all black like this one, they really have a nice, conservative interior with uber comfortable seats and paddle shifters that actually work. They don't have all that lag that some of the European ones do, and certainly not all the lag that a lot of the American dual clutch transmissions have that feel like they're slipping and sliding. They're not precise at all. And if you want to be just conservative, hey, just put it in drive and it'll do all the work for you. You just gotta twirl the wheel around. It'll do all the shifting. It's plenty quick enough just putting it in automatic. And of course, for all you tech files, it's got all the remote controls on the steering column, cruise control and everything, so you can play around with that and not take your eyes off the road. And really, being a Honda product, if you do want to soup things up even further, racing suspension, there's all kinds of aftermarket stuff you can do on Honda products. Hey, these are Civic based. There is so much aftermarket stuff for Civics. Just think of this as a higher end Civic that you can soup up even more. Honda really hit the nail on the head with this 8-speed dual clutch transmissions. I haven't seen any fail. They shift like a dream and they just keep going on forever. Honda/Acura, they're a classic Japanese corporation. They do things incrementally. They make things, make them a little better, make them a little better, make them a little better. If you've ever ridden in the original Honda that was sold in the United States with this little bitty 2-cylinder motorcycle engine and got in one of these, you would think that this one came from a different universe. It's just a bunch of incremental improvements. The Honda engineers have been working on these things for a long time. And they don't just say, oh, that didn't work, we'll throw that away and start with something new. They just keep improving things. Compare the looks of this car with an early Civic. You can see they've really gone a long way. If I was to buy another car, I would certainly buy one of these ILXs. They are excellent cars. Here we have a relatively rare car, a convertible Volvo. It's got their venerable 5-cylinder engine, purchased used with only 61,000 miles. Let's check it out. Now, it might look like a hardtop, but it's a convertible. The Europeans are pretty good at making these hardtop convertibles. We'll get to that later. It's in excellent shape. They really did good finish on these. It's a C70 and it's a Turbo 5. Now, they bought this car for $13,600, and with 61,000 miles, it's a pretty good deal. Let's take a look under the hood. Now, these 5-cylinder engines can basically last forever, and the owner's smart. Since it's a 10-year-old car, first thing he did was put a new timing belt. That's a smart move. They're interference engines. You don't want to ruin an engine for one of a stupid little rubber timing belt. And you can see all the aluminum parts are corroded. Hey, that's what happens. Cars in Massachusetts, East Coast, that itself doesn't mean anything. Now, this particular one was assembled by Pininfarina, Sweden. Now, if you know the history of Volvos, it's been going on for a while. The old P1800s were the same thing. They had some English design, as this did, but Pininfarina were the people that put it together. You got the English and the Italians and the Swedes all getting together. Now, this particular one, strangely enough, he got it from somebody in Ohio. This baby's been in winter weather, so let's check the undercarriage. Solid as a rock after all their Swedish cars. What do you think it does in Sweden? It snows a lot, right? They've been building solid cars for a long time. Do you see a lot of Volvos with rusted pieces falling off of them? You don't, because they know how to keep them from corroding from the salt on the road. If this had been Chrysler, it'd probably be in pieces all over the place by now. The fenders would be falling off, everything would be rotting underneath. But the Swedes know what they're doing when it comes to that. They don't have a problem with the corrosion like other people do. So you can get an old one that's still really solid and isn't falling apart. Plus, these things have really interesting designs. Being a modern enough car, 2011, got a lot of aluminum parts on it. Suspension parts, guess what? Aluminum doesn't rust. Okay, it corrodes, yeah, but it's superficial corrosion. It does not affect the structure. Steel, when it corrodes, believe me, it affects the structure of the vehicle. But aluminum, no, it doesn't have that problem. So it's not like you could buy an American car that, okay, maybe the frame was still good because you rinsed it off, but all the suspension parts, they all start rusting, corroding, falling off. That's not the case of these things. And as I said, it's a 5-cylinder turbo, so it's got a turbocharger with an intercooler on it. Volvo's been making turbo cars for quite some time. They're not new to the game. These 5-cylinder engines are killer engines for lifespan, but they had one big problem. Without a turbo, they were just too slow for the American market. They weren't all that slow if you had a standard transmission, but 95% of Americans drive automatic, so that kind of throws that out the window. My aunt's old P1800, yeah, it was a standard, and she had 350,000 miles on it, and that was a Pininfarina job too. They know how to make solid cars. So let's take a listen to it. Definitely a solid door, I'll say that. And guess what? It sounds exactly like a 5-cylinder Volvo engine. They have a unique sound. They're relatively smooth. They get a little rolling idle sometimes. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. A smooth accelerating engine with a turbo, they actually have some decent acceleration. And with only 64,000 miles, I would expect this one to be in excellent shape. So let's get out the scan tool. So plug it in, turn it on, intelligent diagnosis. Round and around and around it goes. Here we go. C70. You can see there's a lot of computer controls on this thing. Well, it's going to do them all, so we'll do a smart scan. Got a few reds, and these are body systems. That's probably BS, so we'll talk about them later. The only thing that might mean anything is the electronic control module. It says that the rear knock sensor signal is too high. The signal's too high, but it has not yet tripped a freeze frame. Since it hasn't tripped a freeze frame, That means it's a real minor thing that happened once, didn't repeat itself. Now, he never had the check engine light come on. So when I'm done here, I'm going to reset all the codes, because I've actually seen this happen before. I've seen it where somebody did have a problem with a knock sensor. They had it replaced, but they didn't reset the code. I get more of these clowns that work on the cars. They got a good enough machine to see the code, but they don't have one that'll reset it right, so the code stays in memory. And since it doesn't have a freeze frame, it's not that strong of a code. If it's a real code, it's going to have a freeze frame. It's going to show you exactly when the code occurred, what all the data was, and this doesn't have it. So we'll erase it when we're all done, but let's look at the other one. Body system. So we'll check the PDM. Communication with control module, no communication. You see that all the time when it's just a minor electrical flaw. And DDM, DD11, communication with switch pack internal fault. And communication with CRM module, signal missing. Steering column lock module, faulty signal. You get high-tech cars like this, you're often, as they're 10 years old, you're going to get these kind of ghost codes. You never had a problem with it starting. Any little glitch, these computers can see them. And as I said, somebody may, at some point in time, have worked on the system, he's the third owner, and just never reset them. So we're going to reset them all. So here we go. We'll just clear them. And now you can see everything's green. We've cleared them all. Just to see what kind of shape this thing is in, let's go back to the main control module. And we'll look at the live data. We'll select them all. All right, we want to see everything in blue. Let's start going through them. As you can see, the air mass correction factor, 1.09. 1.00 is perfect. Car that's 10 years old, that's totally normal. Fuel pressure is normal. These are so high-tech, they even know the fuel temperature. Timing's fine. They did a good job on the timing belt. The timing's correct. Say, this car's 10 years old. The long-term fuel trim at idle, it's only minus 0.23. That's almost perfect. Rarely you're going to see a car this old, it's going to be that close. And check it out. The outlet valves is 26.50. The target is 26.50. So the valves and the cams are still in absolute perfect shape. They're not even off maybe 1/1000. It's exactly the same. They know how to build these engines. These are no slouch engines. And as we look at the short-term fuel trim, it's only 1, now it's 0.97, 1.02. It's adding just a tiny amount of fuel. That too is almost perfect, but just realize, they don't drive this thing much. It's amazing it's that low, because when it sits up, this thing needs an Italian tune-up. Hey, Pininfarina built it, right? So it needs an Italian tune-up. They need to drive it a little bit faster, a little bit longer. Now, they're nicely appointed, because they are a rather luxurious car, a lot of leather. And here comes our big hump here. And for the big hump, it's pretty smooth. Smooth riding car too, the suspension's well made, a well-designed car. But of course, icing on a cake is the convertible top. And yes, it is a convertible, even though it looks like a hard top. It's almost like a fancy garbage truck getting ready to squash the garbage. Look at this thing, it's like a beetle. It's one of those beetles taking a shell out, putting its wings. It looks like it's ready to fly. Now you got a beautiful convertible. So basically, for the money they paid, they got themselves a luxury convertible that rides like a dream, and of course with that hard shell. The biggest disadvantage of all convertibles. Rag top convertibles are loud. They leak. Take a drive in one when an 18-wheeler's behind you. It sounds like they're in your back pocket and they're gonna crush you. These, they're sound deadening. They're perfectly designed. And of course in the winter, in Sweden, you don't want the snow collapsing your roof, so it makes a lot more sense having a metal fiberglass one than having a piece of canvas that will collapse and leak. And guess what? You don't have to replace the stupid things all the time like a convertible top. It's a rag top that wears out and then the glass or the plastic cracks. No, these are well designed. And they're made by Swedes, so they actually last. Unlike, let's say, the Porsches, which break all the time and cost a fortune, these are pretty dependable. You want to spend a little bit of money like they did and find a car like this with 60,000 miles on it during this pandemic where prices are high? My advice is jump on the thing if it's in good shape as this is. You can see with my little scan tool, it doesn't take a good mechanic more than half an hour to figure out whether the car's good or not. And this one is in excellent shape. Built by Italians, designed by English and Swedes. You got a European consortium that actually did something right this time. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.